Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here not today with my normal co-host, but we do have a special guest in the studio. Well, not in the studio, remotely in our studio. We have one of our missionaries here at Discovery, Ben Sutton. Ben, how are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
We are glad to have you. So this is something kind of fun we've been doing where we've been bringing in some of the missionaries we support here at Discovery and just giving you guys a chance to maybe, sometimes it's like when you guys are here in town, you've got like 5 minutes that you can give an update on things. And so to let you guys have a little bit more time and to be able to speak a little bit more about what is going on in your world has been really fun. And so we are glad to have you. And before we, though, get into that, just a couple quick reminders. As always, if you haven't done so already, please take a minute. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this episode. And feel free to email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. And let us know what you think. Let us know topics we should talk about or, just what you're thinking as you're listening to this. But as always, we're going to jump in with our What is Going On in the World segment today. So what we are going to be talking about today is a couple news stories that caught my eye. I don't know, Ben, if you saw any of these. Did you see this thing in, if it's the Congress or something down in Mexico where they had these aliens on display? Have you seen any of this?
No.
Okay, so they apparently have these 1,000-year-old aliens. I'm going to put this in quote, aliens, that are on display in their, they were showing them off, and it looks like the most fake thing in the world. Like, they're like, these are these real aliens from 1,000 years ago, and they look like little, I'll put up a picture for those of you watching the video podcast. I'll put a screenshot up, but they look like these little paper mache, almost like little alien things. And it doesn't look real. And so everybody's talking about these things, like saying, oh, these are aliens, or are there aliens? And, we've done an episode of our podcast where we talked about aliens, which was hilarious. But yeah, there's supposedly these mummified things. And so now they're going to take them out to these laboratories. They're supposedly going to be running some tests on them. But again, it just looks like paper mache. I don't know. But it made me laugh. And so I don't know, Ben, have you ever had any discussions about aliens and what it would mean?
Yeah, no, I totally have. I wonder if they look like paper mache when they run tests on them. They'll just discover like, oh yeah, wood pulp, paper.
Exactly. That's what I imagine these tests are going to reveal, because, oh my goodness, it's just so funny looking.
Sounds like someone's trying to make some money over there. But I think you can have.
Right. And so it's so weird because lately it's like, we've had our governmental briefings on alien things, and now it's like having here, and it's like, I don't know what's going on with it, but it's definitely entertaining.
It seems like in the past probably year or so, we've taken just like this unusual turn of interest into the UFOs now.
Right.
Like 10 years ago, UFOs is like, oh, dude, that's for the crazy people. And now, like a year ago, we're like, no, this is actually like a legitimate thing.
Oh my goodness. Exactly. That's where it's gone from like you're a crazy conspiracy person to now you're kind of normal if you're talking about I don't know, aliens. It's just funny. And so, like I said, if you missed our episode of the podcast where we talked about this, like, go back and listen to it, because it's kind of fun. It's an interesting thing. But more and more, it's like, what would we do what if these biologists come back and maybe we're going to send in a team from America, and they're going to be like, no, this is some sort of life that we've never seen before. Like, that would be crazy.
Heck, I just read an article kind of on a similar note. It was like a day or two ago. Scientists, astronomers have discovered water and bacteria molecules on some galaxy. I think they said it was exactly 100 light years away.
Oh, wow.
They've discovered some type of bacterial life in that area. And they said it potentially means that it's like habitable for human life, because it's like the right temperatures, has the right amount of oxygen, has carbon in its soil, so it can grow things of that nature.
That's awesome. I wonder what that would. I don't know. That'd be cool. Well, wait, how far away did you say it was?
100 light years away. This is like interstellar level
Yeah.
stuff.
So it's 100 light years, which is still really far, but potentially we could get some. Well, after a long time, get to it. Weird.
Yeah, you'll still croak by getting there because your lifespan will be elapsed by then.
Well, yeah, you'll have to do one of those like colony ships where it's multiple generations of people all living one after the other until they finally, your great grandchildren get there.
Pass.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Now, I was having a conversation the other day. We were talking about Mars with somebody, and they were saying, the first people that go there, it might be a one-way trip. Like, they might have to sign up to be like, you're just going to go live there. And I was like, yeah, I could get on board with that,
You really? I read no, I saw a video. It was a young girl, teenager years, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm really interested in being in the colony to colonize Mars." And she said, "This is like a 16-year-old. This is crazy." She says, "I'm riding away, getting married. I'm riding away, having children. I know this is a one-way trip.
Wow.
I'm okay with that because I'm going to go settle in Mars." And it's just like, man, you're going to live in a bubble for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I'd have to take my whole family with me, obviously. I wouldn't be leaving them behind. So it might take a little bit to convince them to get on board. But, I think as long as we can bring like a good media server and like have some sort of a approximation of the internet, it'll be fine. I can bring my Kindle. It'll be okay.
Bring a Kindle and you'll be all right. And some snacks.
Yeah, give us we can grow some potatoes and it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Potatoes and Kindles.
Oh my goodness. The other news story I wanted to bring up, this is not really a news story. I'm going to preface it with that. This is not really a news story as much as something I feel like I just keep seeing on TikTok. So I guess that counts as news. But apparently there's a lot of conspiracy theory. This kind of fits with aliens too. There's a conspiracy theory about September 23rd being the end of the world. Have you heard anything about anybody talking about that?
No.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny. And like the one video I saw, I was laughing so hard because it was like, this is the reason why. It's been in Hollywood forever. There was a Jim Carrey movie called The Number 23, and in Little Shop of Horrors, the world ended on September 23rd. And that's when the flower came, and Deep Impact, the meteor hit on September 23rd. And it's like going through all these movies that have used September 23rd as when the world is going to end. But I'm like, how would they know in Hollywood when like an asteroid is going to hit and then just put it in all these movies? It's such a weird idea that there's somehow truth behind it that all these people know about, and therefore they're putting it into movies.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. And so as I kind of went maybe too far down a rabbit hole into some of these things of just like all these different things that people are saying, like, here's why it's going to be the 23rd and it's going to be this year's 23rd. I don't know, maybe because it's 2023. I don't know. But it made me laugh. So that was the news that I saw. Like, the world is ending and the aliens are in Mexico. So I don't know what we do with that, but it's kind of fun.
Dude, I remember when I was in college, it was 2012, and I remember that Mayan calendar movie came out, and I remember I was studying for finals, and I'm like, I don't need to study for finals. It's done.
The world's going to end. Why do we need to worry about it?
I still have to study for finals.
It's probably good that you did. There is now, speaking of conspiracy theories, there's another conspiracy theory that right around in 2012 is when we had like scientists had turned on that Large Hadron Collider and done all this like kind of crazy like high-end stuff. And so there's a conspiracy theory that the world did end and that we like transitioned into a new universe or a parallel reality or something in 2012.
This is all a simulation.
This is all a simulation. The thing that, so this is I was just thinking now about that 2012 conspiracy. So the whole idea is that we're in an alternate reality, that we like destroyed our universe accidentally when we turned on that collider. And so now we're in this new one. And the part of that conspiracy theory is then that's why we have all these Mandela effects where we're remembering things wrong from being like a kid. Like, have you heard like Berenstain Bears? How it's actually like Berenstain. It's like IAN, but all kids we all remember it being EIN.
Yeah.
And so the Mandela effect is because we've gone into a different universe, and now we have all these memories of a different reality, but our reality now is fundamentally different. So these are conspiracy theories.
I'll be severely disappointed if that's true, because I love the Bernstein Bears.
Yeah, no, but it's not that. Like, look it up. Like, it's always been AIN at the end, not EIN.
How did we get Steen? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Am I blowing your mind right now?
Dude, TikToks to paper mache airplanes. I'm getting lit up over here.
You are gonna it's gonna change. And it's like there's some really, really famous Mandela effects, as they call them, where it's like we all remember something that's not real. And it started because people thinking Nelson Mandela had died. Let me see if I can give you. So Berenstain Bears, we all remember that. All right, did you ever read Curious George?
Oh, yeah.
Did he have a tail or not? This will be a one to see what your memory is.
Oh, he didn't have a tail.
He did not have a tail. Apparently, all the people think he did. Interesting. Febreze. The word Febreze, like the stuff you spray and smell. How many E's are in the breeze part of it?
2.
No. It only has one E in it. And it has never had 2, but somehow we all remember it having 2. Oh,
really?
That's a weird one. Oscar Mayer, like the hot dogs and stuff like that. How do you spell Meyer?
I don't like this. Meyer?
Nope. Mayer.
I hate this.
Is it? It's things like this where we're like, wait a minute. All right. This is a really fun one. Did you ever play Monopoly?
Yeah.
Does the Monopoly man, does he have a monocle?
Yeah.
Nope. Monopoly man does not have a monocle and never has.
No, he never has.
See, we're all in an alternate reality. We have memories from one reality, but then we broke it. Isn't this weird?
I was about to say, like, the Febreze thing, I can understand, like, how you spell breeze with 2 E's. Like, I'm like, okay, we all just thought that. But the Monopoly thing threw me for a loop. Yep. That brother has had a monocle his whole life.
It's just very weird. And I mean, like I said, there's you can keep going down this rabbit hole, but needless to say, I think it's probably less conspiracy theory into the world and more that we all just kind of have bad memories and we just think of things in certain ways and our memories aren't great about it.
Dude, I just looked it up.
I was gonna say, are you looking it up now?
This is blown. And there's even articles like, why do we all think he has a monocle? Theories for why Monopoly Man's monocle.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's for you listeners at home. If you haven't looked up Mandela effects, look them up, because there's probably at least one or two that you remember that are just completely wrong. The big one that did it for me was Berenstain Bears, because the fact that it's spelled with AIN at the end is just disturbing to me.
That blows me away. Wow.
The other one that was pretty popular was Sinbad. It's one of these things where a lot of people remember that in the 90s, there was a movie called Shazam where Sinbad plays a genie. But it didn't happen. There's no movie called that with Sinbad as a genie.
What?
Am I breaking your mind even more? Yeah. No, Sinbad.
You were describing it. I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember seeing that as a kid.
You remember that movie, but it didn't exist. And that's gonna really now that one is another one that really blows your mind.
How is that possible?
How do we all remember? Like, how do we have collective memory of something that didn't happen? Is a really good question, but it's a weird one.
He was in. I literally described me. I was like, oh yeah, totally. I remember seeing it on
Right.
Disney Channel. I
Now,
didn't even see his screen.
now there was, and maybe this is part of the confusion. I think there was a movie called Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal as a genie. Oh, again, that's not really quite the same as Sinbad and Shazam. And why do we all remember Sinbad? It's weird.
He was in. He was in a movie.
So hopefully I've cooked your noodle a little bit. You're going to be doubting all reality now for a while. So with that, let's jump into
Sit in this.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's jump into our main topic today, which is, of course, like I said, Ben. Ben, as I mentioned before, is one of the missionaries that here at Discovery we support, and we're going to be going, having all of them as a guest at one point or another on this show. But Ben, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about what you do, where you are, and how that is, like, just kind of a general overview of what it is you do.
Geez, I'm still kind of blown away. I'm just supposed to sit in all of this. Good morning.
If you need to just take a minute and remember, like, try to think about, get yourself together. But I know it's disorienting. I'm sorry. I should have maybe saved that for the end to disorient you so badly.
The question was, what's my name? Where am I at? What am I doing?
Yeah, like what? Tell us a little bit about the organization you're currently serving with, because you were in Texas and now you're in Utah, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I went to Discovery when I lived in Colorado. In fact, Discovery Church is a large part as to why I'm a Christian today. That's a story for another day, but Pastor Rick Vanoy shared a verse, 1 Timothy 1:15, when I was 17 years old, the Holy Spirit totally just used that to show me Jesus. But again, another story for another day. My name's Ben. Yeah, after I graduated college, I went to UNC in Greeley. Moved to Nebraska, and I worked for Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ. And worked at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I did that for a year, but while I was there, I knew that I wanted to go to seminary, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of looked around and applied to a bunch of places, and I got accepted to a few. Well, I got accepted to Southwestern Seminary, and then I moved to Texas. That's the reason why I moved to Texas. So I left staff with Crew, and I went to seminary for a little while, and I finished that. And then I joined staff with, the Baptist Student Ministry at University of Texas, Arlington.
Okay.
And did that for a few years. And that is where I met my wife, Maggie. So her and I got married, and she's wonderful. And so her and we left staff with the BSM, and we joined staff with, or became endorsed NAM missionaries, North American Board Missionaries. And so we now are working through a local church in college ministry with NAM. So we're NAM missionaries, but we work at a local church here in Provo, Utah called Mosaic Church.
Okay.
And we do college ministry through the local church here in Provo, Utah.
That's super fun. So, Ben, I don't know, when my wife and I first got married, I was working at the time for Cinemark, and they had transferred me, and we lived in Utah for a couple years. So, we can talk a little bit about that, because it is definitely a unique missions field. Especially depending on, like you said, you're in Provo. We lived in, I worked up in Sugar House and in Park City. And so we lived in Sugar House for a little bit, and then we lived in Draper for a little bit. And yeah, we can definitely talk a little bit more about that. But so working with college students and plugging into a local church there is super cool. What would you say? I mean, I guess let's just jump right in, because Utah and Texas, after Colorado, are both probably culturally quite a big culture shock. What did you think about Texas? I'll tell you this, one of my favorite shows in the world is King of the Hill. And so that is where most of my view of Texas is based out of. And so, yeah, how accurate is King of the Hill to what Texas was really like?
And not too terribly inaccurate, for sure. No, I'm kidding. Great people in Texas. I'm totally kidding. But my wife's from Texas. Texas is flat and it is hot. I loved my time there. Went to seminary. I met my wife there. Got married in Texas. Got ordained in Texas. So Texas has a special place in my heart. But I'm from the Rocky Mountain area, and so I had a heart to go back to somewhat of like the Mountain West area, long term.
Right.
But when I was in seminary, I was finishing up my MDiv, and I really realized that I liked academics a lot. So I decided, like, hey man, I'm gonna apply for a PhD, see if I get in. I'll just kind of see how this works.
Yeah.
And I put in an application, and they looked at all of my CV of my classes I took, and they said, hey, well, you need a few more leveling classes to make yourself competitive for the PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the classes that I took was called New Religious Movements.
Oh.
And it was taught by a former NAM missionary in Utah, and his whole doctorate, his whole PhD was in Mormon doctrine.
Oh, wow.
And so I took this class just thinking like, oh man, this sounds interesting. I took this class for a leveling class, just sounded kind of interesting. And when I was in that class, it was the spring of 2020 when I took it. I realized, one, the stuff learning about the LDS faith, about Mormonism is fascinating, but at the same time, it was also immensely heartbreaking about what these people believe, how it originated, what they placed their hope in. And I knew that if I got into the PhD, I wanted to do something in regards to Mormon doctrine. Yeah. So fast forward, I get in the PhD, and now I'm in my dissertation stage, so I'm finishing up with it. But it's all about how to share the gospel to LDS people, to Mormons. So I'm writing a PhD dissertation on Mormon doctrine, and I was like, man, I have a heart for the LDS people. I want to go back to the Mountain West. Maggie, my wife, she always had a heart for unreached people groups. Yeah. She thought she was going to go to like Korea, China, but then when we married, we realized unreached people groups and the LDS faith are one and the same.
Yeah.
And so we joined with NAM, we raised our support, we moved out here, and it has been a wild ride. The Lord has been doing some incredible things in this immensely unreached people group. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about what God's doing. Even today, I have a really nifty story about what God's doing early this morning. Yeah.
I'm so excited. That is really awesome. And you're right. Like, I think sometimes people, if they're not as familiar with like the LDS faith, it almost does just seem like maybe a little bit of a weird version of Christianity, but still kind of close enough. But it's like, once you dig in and once you see what the actual, approach to justification and sanctification and all of these things, it's so very different. And then of course you get a lot of other strange things, the different planets and things like that also work into that. In Utah, have you ever connected or gotten talked with anybody from, what was that group, Mormon Research Ministry, Bill McKeever and all them?
Yeah, I have a good friend who is former Mormon, now believer, who's pretty strongly connected to them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they're great people. They're up kind of in South Salt Lake. So I'm about 30, 40 minutes away.
Yeah, you said you're in Provo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were there, so my wife helped open up a theater. She was also working for Cinemark at the time. And she helped open up the Orem Theater. So she was commuting down into Orem every day for work. So
in Orem every day. I see Orem on my porch. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like the further south you go, the more Mormon it gets, right? Like if you go up into like Salt Lake City downtown, it is what it is. But once you're down, especially around BYU, it's got to be a lot different.
Sure. I'll say this, the Provo area, it is the most unreached people group in all of North America, which is crazy. In the United States, there is a area of this country where they speak the same language as most Americans. You don't have to get visas to these people. You can get jobs with working with these people. And these people, by North American Mission Board standards, are the most unreached people group in North America. If you are born in Provo, you can be born in Provo, live your entire life in Provo, and die and never meet one evangelical your entire life here.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. So the term of unreached people group is a big thing here in Provo, Utah.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely had that experience. And, we get some of the things, I'll share a couple of little things that I'm thinking of, and then I'll turn it over to you to tell some of these cool things, like what was happening today even. But the fun things I remember, whenever we wanted to go out to grab lunch or something after church, it was always nice because most of the restaurants would be empty. You need to go get some grocery shopping done. It was awesome because most of the stores were empty if you could find one that was open. The downside was that there was never really good coffee anywhere, and that was kind of a bummer for me. I will tell you one story, and then, like I said, I'll turn it over to you. One of the things that always stands out to me, it's what you said. It's like you've got so much opportunities. I had reconnected when we moved out there. I had a really good friend in high school who was Mormon, and he had gone on his mission. I had kind of lost touch with him. I had thought I had heard something. He was talking about Utah at one point. And so we moved out there. I was living out there. We were planning our wedding still. So my wife, Lex, had not moved out yet. She was back here for calls planning the wedding. So I was just kind of hanging out by myself most days for those first few months. And I got a call from this friend out of the blue. I had not talked to him since high school. And he just was like, hey, I haven't talked to you in forever. I just wanted to check in, see what was going on. I was like, hey, good to talk to you. We were chatting about things. I said, I just moved to Salt Lake. He's like, no way, that's cool. I'm in Salt Lake. I was like, really? That's awesome. I knew you had talked about coming down here. Where in Salt Lake are you? Turned out he was just down the street from me, like literally just a couple blocks away is where he and his wife were living. So it was cool. We rebuilt that connection, and we're still really good friends with him. He is very, intensely LDS. And so one day a little bit later, we had moved to Draper. And we were helping to lead worship at the church this week. And so because my wife was going to be singing and leading that week, we're like, hey, you guys should come to church with us. Knowing that most days they'll say no, but they're like, oh, it's general conference this week. We don't have our actual church to go to. Sure, why not? We can come to church. I was like, cool. It's a fun way to get you to church. So they come to church. We've got the music and stuff. We sit down, and our pastor gets up, and he's like, so we have a special thing today. I'm not actually going to be preaching. We've got Bill McKeever from MRM here doing a presentation on Mormonism. And I'm like, oh my goodness, my friend is going to think I set him up and that I invited him here just to hear this. Like, here's the problems with Mormonism. And I'm like, I leaned over to him. I did not know this guy was going to be here today. I'm not trying to attack you. He's like, oh no, don't worry about it. You're fine. And it ended up being really cool. They went out for coffee. They stayed in touch a little bit. My friend is still a Mormon, but it is open. We continue to have these dialogues and these things, even now that we don't see each other as often. It was really cool, just the way that everything kind of clicked into place that day. And I still hope that it started something, at least. It got some questions in there.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome, man. And that's exactly, you just look for little windows of opportunity to be able to share truth and love with these people, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't you tell me about some of the things that are going on for you? Like, what are some of the cool successes that you've seen so far?
Yeah, dude. What's crazy is a lot of times people think when you interact with LDS people that you need to be well rehearsed in apologetics, and you need to know like, okay, well they'll say this, so I'll say this, and I'll counter these things, and once you do that, they'll come to this crisis of faith, and then you'll be able to introduce Jesus. But when you actually come here and you interact with LDS people, that stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because LDS people, they just default to either one of two things. One, you're persecuting me because I have the right faith. That's their immediate default. Or two, it's just, well, Joseph Smith says this, or the Book of Mormon says this. It's like, that's just their default.
Right.
And to be fair, us Christians, we do the same thing. Someone attacked our faith, we would just go, right, but Paul says this, or Jesus says this, so that's how I know it's true.
Yeah.
So you have to approach these people with love, with respect, but also you have to articulate the gospel. And so when I interact with LDS friends here, I'm not going into attacking the Book of Mormon. I'm not going into problems with Joseph Smith. I'm not going into, did you know he had 42 or 44 wives and blah, blah.
Right.
No, well, that's true, but none of that matters. The person that's going to come to know the Lord, they're not going to be torn down from Mormonism, so they realize they need Jesus. They need Jesus.
Right.
So we're at Mosaic Church, and our ministry and Maggie and I's ministry, we're pro-Jesus. We're not anti-Mormon, because being pro-Jesus, it dismantles all of the lostness when you're pro-Jesus. And so I say that because Mosaic, we're a small church, but we're a growing church. And just this past year, we've had about 4 or 5, or one, I'm not so sure, but I'll say 5 people who were former Mormon, now believers.
That's amazing.
Just the past few weeks, we've baptized several of these individuals. And next month, we're baptizing a few more former Mormon, now believers. And what you realize is that these people, they're sweet people, but a lot of these people, they're buried in works upon works upon works upon works. I've had so many conversations with people here talking, just untangling Mormonism out of their worldview. Just, yeah, this is not what the Bible, this is what the Bible teaches. That's not what the Bible teaches. Just exploding very, very basic level concepts about Christianity, because these people never heard it. And so there's one girl, I won't share her name or anything because she's in a very sensitive situation, but she's just her the person, and there's actually a few, the animosity, I can never say that word.
Animosity
that she's experiencing from her community and all that. It's like, man, I didn't have to go through that when I became a believer. And so it kind of just breaks your heart, and you want to extend mercy with these people of like, man, these are precious brothers and sisters who are experiencing real life persecution. It's a different world here for sure. But the Lord's been doing really sweet things. I can go on. I can share personal examples if you'd like. I don't want to model.
No. Please, by all means. That's why we got you here. I think it's really encouraging for our people here to be able to hear these things. And I think, like you said, I don't think people realize that there is this vast unchurched group so close. And so to have these tangible examples to make it kind of real for them, I think is going to be really helpful. So please, by all means, share what God's doing.
There's two girls at our church who both were former Mormon and have become believers, and they told their parents, and their parents have various reactions. And we as the church, I mean, this is where kind of the rubber hits the road. We as the church, we've had to help them out with figuring out like jobs and money and where to live, right? Because they've just, some of these girls and some of these guys literally lost everything. So it's such a sad, but also very, very sweet aspect in ministry. When you get to be there and literally like love and walk through life with some of these people. But it's really nifty. There's one guy here. His name is I'll just call him Peter. Peter is former Mormon, and now he's a believer, and he's a really cool guy. He goes to one of the schools here called UVU, and that brother, like, he just gets it. Like, he's like, man, I was lost. Like, I understand how these people think. And he has such a heart for, like, I want these people, I want my family, I want these people to come to know the truth because I found the truth. And so we're just doing a lot of discipleship with new believers. We're planning and running events. Just last night, I got to talk about, I preached John 2, verses 1 to 12. It's where Jesus turned water to wine. Was talking about, like, this is a miracle of Jesus, this is a sign of Jesus, and how Jesus just extends joy to all of us who place our faith in him. Right. And so I'm excited what the Lord's doing here, man. It's an unreached people group, and you can hear about statistics all day long of, like, man, it's so lost here. It's 99.9% lost. It's true. That can motivate you, but if you rely on that, that can also depress you.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But you just have to, you remain faithful, you share the gospel often, and you look for the person that the Holy Spirit is working in.
Yeah.
And so, and the Holy Spirit, I mean, and there are spiritually open people here. A lot of people think it's like, oh, it's a really hard ministry here. It might be, but the Holy Spirit, he is still here, and he's still working on people. And so, I mean, even now, my wife Maggie, she had a great convo with a girl who's a seeker, who is currently Mormon now, but she's, like, very much saying, like, hey, I realize there's a huge difference here, and I'm wanting to know more. Yeah. So we're praying she comes to know the Lord. She might not, but we hope she does. But I mean, that's the Holy Spirit working in her life for her, like, craving, hey, this is I want this Jesus of the Bible.
Yeah. That's really awesome. Have you found one of the things that I seemed to see? It felt like as people kind of learn about a little bit more about their Mormon faith, and they start to kind of maybe pull away from that, they're almost at that point turned off to any type of belief system. It's almost like, I felt like I was lied to by this. Why should I ever trust anything again? Do you find that as an attitude of people, at least as they're leaving the church?
For sure. There is a very large kind of underground ex-LDS population here. And you could always tell, it's a for sure tell who's ex-LDS. You can just look at someone and know they're ex-LDS, because they are people who totally rejected their LDS former religion. And so what they have is piercings, tattoos, mohawk hairs, all the, like, studded jackets. Like, they just look completely opposite of Mormon.
Yes, if there's a Mormon look, they have the opposite.
They have the opposite of the Mormon look.
I like that.
And what's sad about it is, most of the time, those people, exactly what you said, they're bitter. They're super distrusting, because it's like, my whole life I was told I have the one true religion. I was told, why would I need anything else? I have the one true religion. It's the restored Christianity. And then you just do 1 inch of digging into Mormonism, and you realize all of it's a sham.
Right.
So it makes sense. Like, for 20 years of my life, I was told this is the truth, and then now I realize it's not. So what is truth now?
Right. That's
yeah.
So what have you found to be, that maybe is kind of a good segue into, like, what are the biggest challenges that you face in a place like this?
Some of the biggest challenges, the enemy is real. I don't say this to, like, poke or prod or make fun of, or, like, to point out, or, like, to pick on something, but Mormonism, I think, is one of the most demonic religions I think you can encounter, because Joseph Smith, the founder of the LDS, was brilliant. He takes all the Christian lingo,
right?
He just changes the definitions of all of them. And so you can have a conversation like, hey, do you love Jesus? Do you believe he died on the cross for your sins? They'll be like, absolutely, yes and amen. But what they mean by Jesus died on the cross for sins, God, like it's not even just like someone. So it's like A to Z different.
Right.
It's like talking about paper airplanes and aliens. Like it's two totally different things.
Yeah, it's
So you have to detangle that in conversations.
yeah, I remember running into that, and when you could say, we're saved by grace, and they'll be like, "Yep, we agree with that," and it's like, but what do you mean by that? It is so different. What you mean by that? So defining your terms is so important, and it is so much. The other thing that really struck me while we were there, it's like you hinted at this a little bit. There's more than just belief wrapped into it. There's your entire culture, your job, and your family, and kind of your whole structure is all tied together. And so we definitely ran into quite a few people who, if you were to get into a one-on-one conversation, they wouldn't really actually believe anything about Mormonism, but they would still say that they were Mormon. And if you said anything negative about the LDS faith, they would defend it very fiercely. We called them Jack Mormons or whatever, but it's like this idea of even if they don't believe it, they're kind of culturally so tied in that it's got to make it so hard for, to take that step out of it.
For sure. Yeah, you summed it well. It's much more than just a religion. It's a culture here.
Yeah.
So it permeates your finances, your family, your friends, your thinking, your school, like everything. And so it just has like hooks into people because it's not just, like I said before, it's not just like this. Well, if I just show them how Mormonism is wrong, they'll be like, I don't want to be Mormon.
Right.
No. They have to give up everything, and a lot of times if they leave Mormonism. So it's a whole thing here. And I'll say this. I feel like I'm ranting a lot, but I like talking about this because I want more believers to just catch a heart. For like Luke 10:2, Jesus says, "The harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few."
Yeah.
Therefore, pray to the Lord of the harvest that He sends more laborers. Man, if any place, there's tons of unreached people groups for sure. Yes and amen. We need laborers there.
Yeah.
But this is a place that many people, many Christians just overlook because it's like, oh yeah, well, missions, like international missions, that's the move. But man, this is a place where we need believers to come. Then they're just not.
Yeah.
Utah County, the county that Provo is in, Provo, Orem, Utah County. Did you know that it is the highest in suicides in the country, highest in antidepressant prescriptions, highest in elective surgeries, and highest in pornography downloads?
Wow.
At the same time, it is also the most religious county in all of North America.
That's fascinating.
You see a correlation here.
Yeah. No, I think so. And, if kind of when you look, again, going into kind of the LDS faith, what you said before, they're so enmeshed in a works-based system that the pressure that puts on you, because it is entirely, you've got to earn your salvation through that. And so you do see, like, I just remember it was so strange to me driving down the highway and seeing billboard after billboard for plastic surgery, because it's like, you got to make sure you're presenting yourself as good as possible because it's all tied in together. It's like how well you're doing and how good you look and all the externalities are going to factor into how good of a Mormon you are. And like the pressure that must put on a person would make sense that it leads to the depression and all those other things that you're mentioning being so high there.
Yeah. It's, if I have to look perfect, act perfect, and be perfect all the time. And the concept of forgiveness and mercy is so not really even a thing here. And so when I interact with LDS friends, like one big thing that we always stress is like mercy and grace found in Jesus.
Yeah.
How you don't have to perform. We always say like, we'll always ask them, hey, do you believe Jesus died on the cross for your sins? And we'll always go, oh yeah, totally. We believe the same thing. And I go, oh, okay, well, one more question then. Do you believe you're as righteous as Jesus right now? And they will always, always, always say, no, absolutely not. I have to strive to be like him. I got to follow the 10 commandments. I got to do the 21 steps of progression all the time. Right. And then maybe when I get to one of the levels of heaven, maybe I can be as righteous as Jesus, but I don't know if I ever will be. And then you go, man, that's heartbreaking to hear, because man, 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, for he who knew no sin became sin so that we might become the righteousness of God. And so what that means is, because of my faith in Jesus, I'm righteous right now.
Yeah.
Because of my faith in Jesus. I'm as righteous as Christ because of my faith. And then Galatians 3:16 says, for if I rely on works of the law, I'm condemned. It's only by my faith that I'm justified. And that's always such a conversation starter of like, man, what I'm saying is that you don't have Christ's righteousness and you never will, but I do. And it's certainly not because of anything I've done, because I'm actually sin, but because Christ was kind, he took my unrighteous record and gave me his righteous record because of my faith in him and him alone. And that blows their mind.
I was going to say that should get their attention, because as we've said, with something that is so much works-based, striving for perfection, like I think about like their temples, and how just to even get into the temple, you have to get your temple recommend, and you have to demonstrate that you are doing X, Y, and Z down their list of here's how I'm good enough to get to God's presence, versus Christianity of like, nobody's good enough for God's presence, but he came to us, and everything that you're talking about. And so if that's communicated to a Mormon person, to me, that would be such a relief of like, no, I don't have to keep striving like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right about temples. I mean, they think literally you perform these 3 different things in temples, and you do those 3 separate things over and over and over and over for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And that earns you, you progress to your salvation when you do that. And to do that, even to get to the temple, you're exactly right. You got to follow these things, and your bishop makes sure so you're following these things.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's just insane the amount of works these people have to do.
So as we kind of bring this main segment maybe to a close, what are some ways that people can get involved, whether that's, planning a mission trip out there, supporting, your organization, things like that? Like, what are some of the different ways? Obviously here at Discovery, we are praying for you and, would love to help, support in any other way we can.
Yeah. There's a few things here. One, I said it before, Luke 10:2 or Matthew 9:36. I mean, pray to the Lord of the harvest, because the labors are few. And that applies to every context and all over the world. There's a lack of laborers everywhere. If Google has a high amount of jobs or high amount of demand, but there's one job. Christian ministry, there's huge levels of demand, and there's like one worker for these millions of people. We need to flip. So Christians, we have to be willing to lay down what we want and submit to the Lordship of Jesus and say, Lord, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to give? So that's one. 2, proclaim the gospel where you are right now or wherever you go. You have to be bold and have the courage to, through the power of the Holy Spirit, to share Jesus. You don't have to have systematic theologies, but if you know enough to be saved by the gospel, you know enough to share it. And you can trust the Holy Spirit with results. Yeah. And then lastly, or second to last, mission teams, like we in Mosaic, our biggest need is broad gospel sowing, because receptivity here is low, but there are people who want to know more, but we need lots of people to go meet these people so we can find some. So we host mission teams, and we'd love to host Discovery as well as all of our supporting churches and other partners and friends. We host mission teams here all the time. Awesome. So I'd love to have that combo hosting mission teams here. And then lastly, and it's a selfish one and it's a true one though, but Maggie and I are totally support ways. And living in it's expensive.
Yeah.
So we have to support raise quite a bit of money to sustain ourselves here. And so we're right at the edge of like, okay, we're making it right now financially. We'd like to go a little bit beyond making it to living a little bit more comfortable.
Sure. Well, we'll definitely put some links in the podcast description and in the YouTube description. We'll have some links directly to ways that they can get directly involved as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's move on into one of my favorite segments. Now, this segment, Ben, came about when I discovered how much fun AI and like ChatGPT is. I don't know if you've ever messed around much with any of this AI stuff, but it's crazy how good it is at coming up with things. And so what we like to do is I have it generate some kind of a top 10 list. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's serious-ish. And then I'll let whoever's on the show with me kind of blind react to it. So nobody ever knows other than me going into it what this list is going to be. And so I try to do things that are sometimes topical, sometimes they're just things that I thought would be funny. And just see what you think about these. So I have a couple options that I was kind of thinking of today. Let me ask you this before we pick which of the lists I've generated would be. Are you a Star Wars fan at all?
Of course.
Awesome. All right. So here's the list we're going to go with today then. That's perfect. Matt is our normal co-host. Is going to be sad he missed this one because he loves Star Wars, but that's too bad. Matt, sorry if you're listening to this right now. You can email podcast@dfchurch.com and let me know how sad you are that you missed it. But here is the thing that I asked the AI to give us. The top 10 Bible stories retold as Star Wars stories.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So here's what it gave me. Number 10, the Nativity as the birth of the chosen one. All right. That's kind of an easy one. Here, I'll read the description. But obviously when they did like the whole Anakin Skywalker thing, he was kind of like a Jesus figure anyway, right? He didn't have a father and all that. The birth of the Force-sensitive chosen one takes place on a distant, desolate planet, paralleling the birth of Jesus in a humble stable. That one is pretty easy. So here we go. Number 9, the Battle of Jericho as the Siege of Coruscant. Jedi Knights using the Force to bring down the impenetrable shields of the Sith-controlled planet Coruscant. Okay. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's kind of fun. Jonah and the Whale as Leia and the Space Beast. Princess Leia is swallowed by a massive space creature and has an introspective experience before being safely regurgitated. Okay, that's interesting. Number 7, the Burning Bush as the Forceful Bush. Jedi Knight Anakin encounters a mysterious burning force-imbued bush on a distant planet where he receives a divine revelation. I don't know about that one. That would be kind of weird as a Star Wars story. Okay, now this is getting fun. Number 6, I like this. Daniel the Lion's Den as Obi-Wan in the Rancor Pit. Obi-Wan Kenobi faces a similar trial, being thrown into a pit of a ferocious Rancor, only to use his wits and the Force to survive. So I guess it's not relying on God and angels closing the mouths, but yeah, that would work. This is interesting. The Prodigal Son as the Lost Skywalker. A Luke Skywalker-inspired character goes astray, but later returns to the Jedi Order seeking redemption from Master Yoda. Interesting, I guess. Yoda being like the father in the parable of the lost prodigal son. Number 4, the Last Supper as the Jedi Council meeting. Yoda gathers the Jedi Council for a crucial meeting akin to the Last Supper where they discuss the fate of the galaxy. I kind of now what I need to do at some point, this just inspired me. Speaking of AI, I need to use one of those AI image generators to recreate the Last Supper painting, but using Star Wars characters in all of the different spots. Wouldn't that be amazing? I bet we could find a way to do that. Maybe not on this episode, like as a graphic that I post up, but at some point, if you're listening to this, I'm going to try to recreate this in AI because this sounds really fun. All right. Number 3, the top Bible stories retold in Star Wars. Noah's Ark as Han's Ark. Han Solo is tasked with saving the last remnants of endangered species from various planets by piloting the Millennium Falcon through the intergalactic flood. I don't know what an intergalactic flood would be.
Yeah. How does that work?
But I do like the idea of Han getting a bunch of animals on the Millennium Falcon. Oh my goodness. Okay. Number 2, David and Goliath as Anakin and the droid army. Young Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi Padawan, takes on a colossal battle droid using the Force and his lightsaber. Okay.
Hey,
I'd watch that. And then
I'd hit subscribe.
Number 1, the Exodus as the Galactic Exodus. Moses becomes a wise Jedi, leading the oppressed Wookiees out of the oppressive rule of the Sith Empire, parting the Tatooine desert with his lightsaber. That is a mental image right there. Oppressed Wookiees and the parting of the sands of the desert. Although, what are you parting? Like, what are you walking on then? Like when you part the sea, you're walking along the sea floor and the water's all around you. You part the sand of the desert. But what are you on? What do you go down to?
The not sand. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I would watch all of those. Every single one of those would be something that I would find entertaining, I think, though. How about you?
Yeah. I'm excited to see them on Disney Plus.
This will be the next Disney Plus show. I'm kind of stuck on this idea of the Jedi Council meeting as the Last Supper painting. I just think that would be so fun.
So that include our dude who's like the elephant from episode 4 who played the sax or his little trunk like
yes, Max Rebo, I think is his name.
Oh really?
I'm such a nerd. Yeah, he was like the blue elephant guy. He was like the band leader. And they kind of downplayed him in the special edition. They made him not as exciting. They had like that whole other song they put in. Well, let me go real quick into our listener mail section before we close it out for the day. Again, if you want to email us, please email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com, just like Morgan did. She wrote, I don't know if you guys have the capacity, but I was listening to a song. This is me, the greatest showman. Don't judge, it says. And I was thinking about its theological implications. People in pain, feeling isolated, and looking for a place to fit in. This led me to the idea of a series in the podcast where the host and guests choose secular songs that either resonate with or contradict a theological principle. That would be kind of a fun series, like trying to find the secular songs, but then how they could tie in into certain theology. Has that ever happened? Have you ever been hearing a song that's like not a Christian song, but it made you think either, wow, they've got a strange conception of what the truth is, like it's a contrast, or it actually fits in well?
Yeah. Well, first of all, The Greatest Showman, I'm convinced is one of the best movies in the world. So I don't know why the person is worried about judgment. But honestly, the best song in the world that you're talking about is called Sky Full of Stars by Coldplay. That is the best song in the world, I'm convinced.
Okay. I'm actually not familiar with that one. How does it go?
Oh man.
I mean, I don't need to necessarily sing it, but if you want, you can sing it, but
let me warm up my vocal.
Yeah.
Just because Sky Full of Stars, it probably has nothing to do with theologically. I just think it's beautiful, and so I think of heaven when I think of it.
That's awesome. Well, I've been in that. It's like you can see something that's just like so beautiful and moving and like amazing that even if it's not explicitly about God, you're like, beauty just reminds us of how good and beautiful God is, and so it can bring us into that point of like, in a weird way, like worship. Like it's like the same thing as seeing like an amazing sunset, or like when we see nature, or just things that hit us, and it's like beauty is such a weird thing to think of if we don't have a God who cares about things that are beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. It's like common grace God gives the whole world, as we can come up with music and art and expressions and that stuff. And that's because God is kind. He gave us the ability to create that stuff, which points to him. Yeah.
I love it. Well, that's all the time we have for today. But again, Ben, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Of course. I appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah. And next week, I should have my schedule open, but I don't right now. So I'm not quite sure what it is we're hitting next week. Pastor Matt should be back, and we will see you then. Thanks again.